Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. Xiao Meng had always been a lover of libraries. The dim lighting, the soft hum of silence, and the smell of old books were comforts to her in a world that often moved too quickly. On this particular day, however, something strange beckoned her toward the farthest corner of the university library. It was a section she had never ventured into before, a dusty and long-forgotten part of the building. The books here were older, their spines cracked and faded, their titles barely legible. Xiao Meng's fingers brushed lightly over one after another, her curiosity piqued. She liked the way the worn covers felt under her touch, as if each book had a secret, an untold story waiting for the right person to discover it. But it wasn't a book that caught her eye. Tucked between two massive tomes was a folded fabric-like material. Intrigued, she tugged it out, causing a cloud of dust to rise into the air. Coughing softly, Xiao Meng unfolded the fabric and saw that it was a cloak, an elegant yet simple design with an ethereal shimmer under the low light of the library. She draped it over her shoulders, smiling to herself. It felt lighter than air, and the way it settled around her body gave her an odd sense of familiarity, as though it belonged to her. Just as the thought crossed her mind, the ground beneath her shifted. It wasn't a physical movement, but a sensation like the space around her was bending, warping. Before she could react, the library around her blurred. The wooden shelves, the walls, the ancient floorboards, they all melted away, replaced by something entirely different. A world that seemed to exist in a dream. Xiao Meng blinked and took a cautious step forward. She was no longer in the library. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of pine and moss around her. Towering trees stretched up into the sky, their leaves glittering as though touched by a strange light. The forest floor was soft underfoot, a mixture of grass and something that felt alive. "What is this place?" she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. A soft rustling nearby startled her. Turning quickly, she came face to face with a fox, or what appeared to be a fox. It had the typical sleek red fur, but its eyes gleamed with a strange intelligence. It was the way the creature looked at her that made her pause. "You are not from here, are you?" The fox spoke. Its voice calm but full of curiosity. Xiao Meng took a step back, her heart racing. "You can talk." "Yes, and you are wearing the cloak," the fox said, nodding toward her shoulders. That means you've crossed over." Crossed over, she repeated, her mind struggling to catch up. She looked down at the cloak, then back at the fox. "Where am I, and how are you talking?" The fox sat down, gracefully curling its tail around its leg. "You are in a parallel world, the other side of the veil. You must have found the cloak in your world." "Yes." Xiao Meng hesitated, her fingers brushing the fabric. "I did. I found it in the library." "That's where many of these artifacts end up," the fox mused, almost to itself. "It's at a place where the lines between our worlds are thin." Then looking back at her with a serious expression, it added, "But there's subtle time to explain everything. This world is in danger, and if it falls, your world will be next." It felt a chill creep up her spine. "What do you mean? What's not happening?" "The dark forces are gathering," the fox said ominously. "They seek to merge our worlds and plunge them both into darkness. The cloak you wear was once used to maintain balance, but now that you've crossed over, you read a part of that." Xiao Meng took a deep breath, trying to process the information. It sounded absurd, like something out of a fairy tale, but the weight of the fox's words, the strange shimmer of the world around her, and the cloak on her shoulders told her otherwise. This was real. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "You must learn to control the cloak," the fox replied. "It holds great power, but it will also test you. If you succeed, you may be able to stop the forces that threaten us, but if you fail, both worlds will be consumed." Xiao Meng swallowed hard. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this was something else entirely. "How do I begin?" she asked, her determination rising. "How do I stop them?" The fox's eyes gleamed with approval. "Follow me. There is much to learn and little time to waste." With that, the fox turned and trotted off into the forest. Xiao Meng followed, the cloak billowing softly behind her as they ventured deeper into the magical world. As they walked, the fox, who introduced itself as Pharaoh, began to explain more about the parallel world. It was, as he described, a mirror of her own world, but filled with magic creatures and ancient power. But dark forces had long sought to blur the lines between the two worlds, seeking to corrupt both. The cloak was created centuries ago, Ferrano explained as they passed through an enchanted forest, the trees humming softly with light. It was designed to allow its bearer to travel between worlds, but its power comes at a cost. It can drain your energy if used too much, and if you're not careful, it can twist your will. Xiaomeng nodded, listening intently. So it's not just a tool for traveling. No, it's much more than that. Furrow said gravely, it sounds that key, and with it, you can open paths that have been closed for centuries. But you must be cautious. The dark forces are aware of the cloak's reappearance, and they will stop at nothing to claim it. The weight of the situation settled heavily on her shoulders, but Xiaomeng knew there was no turning back. The cloak had chosen her for a reason, and now it was her responsibility to protect both worlds. Who are these dark forces? She asked, curiosity driving her forward. Ferrino's expression darkened. They are led by a sorcerer named Mordor. He was once a powerful and respected figure in our world, but his thirst for control led him down a dark path. He seeks to merge the two worlds, creating a realm where he can rule as a god. Meng's heart pounded in her chest. A dark sorcerer trying to conquer both worlds. This was more than she had bargained for. But something inside her stirred, a flicker of resolve she hadn't known she possessed. If this cloak had chosen her, then she would see it through no matter the cost. After days of training under Farrell's guidance, Xiaomeng began to understand the true potential of the cloak. It wasn't just about becoming invisible. It allowed her to manipulate light and shadow, to hide in plain sight, and even bend time for brief moments. But every time she used its powers, she felt a deep fatigue settle in her bones, as if the cloak was feeding on her energy. Farrow warned her not to overuse it. The more you rely on its magic, the more it will take from you. You must find balance, or it will consume you. Xiaomeng took his words to heart. She practiced daily, honing her skills while conserving her strength. She learned to sense the magical currents in the air, to manipulate them with precision. The cloak became an extension of herself, a tool she could wield with growing confidence. But time was running out. Reports of shadowy creatures appearing in her world began to reach Xiaomeng and Ferrell. Mordor's influence was spreading, and the barrier between the worlds was weakening. Xiaomeng could feel the pressure mounting. Each day brought new signs of Mordor's growing power, dark clouds gathering over the horizon, whispers of shadow creatures slipping through the cracks of the worlds, and strange distortions in reality that sent shivers down her spine. The weight of the cloak around her shoulders grew heavier with each passing moment, but she pushed through, determined to keep going. Her allies were crucial. Ferrell, always calm and full of wisdom, guided her with patience. The elven archer Arvin, who had joined their cause, was a skilled fighter and tracker, knowing how to read the signs of the dark forces and stay ahead of them. Seraphine, the rogue sorceress, had been reluctant at first to join their group, her past connection to Mordor making her a potential liability, but her knowledge of dark magic proved invaluable. Together, they made their way to Mordor's Seraph Fortress, a place that Seraphine warned was nearly impenetrable. It was nestled deep in the heart of a desolate valley surrounded by jagged mountains and cloaked in darkness. The landscape itself seemed to fight against them, the air thick with the stench of decay, the ground cracking beneath their feet. Xiaomeng could feel the malevolent energy swirling around them as they approached the fortress. Her grip tightened around the cloak, feeling its power thrumming against her skin. The group moved cautiously, their footsteps silent as they navigated the twisted terrain. Shadows seemed to flicker in the corners of her vision, but every time she turned to look, they disappeared. "We were close," Aaron muttered, his keen eyes scanning the horizon. "I can feel it." Xiaomeng nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The cloak's magic was vibrating stronger now, almost as if it were reacting to the darkness around them. She could sense Mordor's presence, the weight of his evil, pressing down on her. It was suffocating. "Stay focused," Seraphine warned. "The fortress is full of traps. Mordor 1T, let us get close without a fight." They pressed on, the entrance to the fortress looming ahead like the mouth of a great beast. Black stone walls rose high into the sky, slick with moisture and covered in dark, twisted vines. There were no guards, none that they could see at least, but Xiaomeng knew better than to trust appearances. The moment they crossed the threshold, the air changed. A deep, unnatural cold swept over them, biting at their skin. Inside the fortress was eerily quiet, the halls wide and empty. Their footsteps echoed ominously as they ventured deeper into the maze-like structure. the oppressive silence making every small sound seem magnified. Ixaomeng's eyes darted around, every sense on high alert. She could feel the cloak's magic stirring, warning her of hidden danger. They passed through long, narrow corridors, the walls lined with strange runes that glowed faintly in the dark. Seraphine studied them carefully, her brow furrowed. "Mortar swords," she muttered. "They were meant to trap us in illusions. Stay close." The further they went, the more the air around them seemed to thicken, like they were walking through a swamp of invisible energy. Xiaoyameng's breathing grew shallow, her chest tightening with each step. It felt as though the walls were closing in, the shadows stretching longer and darker. Without warning, the floor beneath them shifted, Aaron shouted, leaping back just as a section of the ground crumbled away, revealing a pit of darkness below. Shh. Xiaomeng stumbled, her heart racing as she grabbed onto the cloak, feeling its energy surge as she pulled herself back from the edge. Seraphine's voice was sharp. "It's us, a trap, he knows we're here." Before anyone could react, the darkness around them came alive. Shadows poured out of the walls, swirling together into nightmarish shapes, creatures with no faces, their bodies shifting like smoke. They lunged at the group, their claws slicing through the air. Ice instincts kicked in. She pulled the cloak tightly around her and vanished from sight, the world around her blurring as the cloak's magic activated. The creatures hesitated, their heads swiveling as if confused by her sudden disappearance. She moved swiftly, weaving through the shadows, her movements invisible. Aaron and Seraphine fought valiantly, their weapons flashing in the dim light. Aaron's arrows flew with precision, striking the shadow creatures with deadly accuracy, while Seraphine's spells crackled in the air, sending bolts of lightning through the smoke like foam. But the shadows kept coming, and Xiaomeng reappeared behind one of the creatures, drawing on the cloak's power to manipulate the light and shadow around her. She struck with a burst of magic, sending the creature dissipating into the air like smoke. But each time one disappeared, another took its place. The dark energy seemed endless, feeding off the very walls of the fortress. "We can fight them," Allure shouted, firing another arrow. Xiaomeng knew he was right. They were wasting time. Mordar was ahead, and every second they spent here fighting his minions was another second closer to his victory. "Follow me," she called out, her voice barely audible over the chaos. She drew on the cloak's power, wrapping it around herself and her ally. The shadows that had been attacking them seemed to lose sight of their targets, confused by the magic. In that brief moment, Xiaomeng led them through the corridor, moving swiftly past the creatures that clawed at the wall. They didn't stop until they reached a large iron door at the end of the hallway. Xiaomeng's breath came in ragged gasps, the cloak's magic draining her strength. She leaned against the wall, her body trembling from the exertion. Seraphine placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did well, but this is just the beginning. Mordar's lair is beyond this door." Xiaomeng nodded, forcing herself to stand upright. Her muscles ached, and her mind was foggy from using so much of the cloak's samovar. But there was no turning back now. Together they pushed open the heavy iron door, revealing a massive chamber beyond. At the center of the room stood a figure draped in dark robes, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Mordar. He turned slowly to face them, a twisted smile on his lip. "So you've come," he said, his voice like a whisper carried on the wind, "and you bring the cloak with you." Xiaomeng could feel the weight of his gaze like 1,000 needles pressing into her skin. The cloak stirred, reacting to Mordar's Sari's presence, its magic humming with energy. "You've gone too far," Xiaomeng said, her voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at her insides. "I want to let you destroy both worlds." Mordar chuckled softly, his dark eyes glittering. "You think you can stop me? Little girl, that cloak belongs to me. It always has." Xiaomeng sighed, heart raced. She knew this confrontation wasn't inevitable, but facing Mordar in the flesh was far more terrifying than she had imagined. He radiated power, his very presence warping the air around him. But she couldn't back down, drawing on every ounce of strength she had left. Xiaomeng stepped forward, her allies by her side. The final battle was upon them, and only one side would walk away victorious. The room crackled with energy as Mordar raised his hands, dark magic swirling around him. Xiaomeng braced herself, gripping the cloak tightly. She could feel its power surging through her veins, mingling with her own resolve. The time had come to end this once and for all.